Okay, this is the wood that we're going to be using. This is walnut. And I've made some scribble marks here. And we got some defects here I don't want to be using here. But these marks will be, I'll show you why I do that a little bit later here. But this first cut is going to be the 2 1/4 inch one. This will be for row number 1. So I'll take care of the first one. Next one is 2 inches. Number 3 is going to be 1.5 inches. Now the rest of them are going to be 1.25 inches. Okay, now before I do the next one, I realized I had my sweater sleeves too close, and so I pulled them up over my elbows, just as a safety measure. Now on this one we got a bad spot there. We need, this is 30, so this is a little over 32 inches, so what we need is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 strips, and then we'll cut out the bad spots when we go to do our segments. When you see a spot like this, you definitely want to cut that out so that you don't get that involved, because that'll be a defect and it'll show a defect in your work. Okay, there's our 8 boards that we're going to need. Now, we got a clamp there. Now, we're going to make a test cut on this one. Let's see how close we are right there. We'll lock that in. When I'm cutting these small pieces, I always keep a pencil, unsharpened pencil with an eraser. That way I can flip the pieces away from the saw blade, and that will keep my fingers. So it's just a little safety precaution. That's 0.734. Let's get that a little closer. Yeah, that's. I think that this is going to be close enough that we can just go ahead and use these for this particular ring. So I'm just going to go ahead and two, 4, 8, 9. Need 3 more. Now turn them all up so that they've all got the white marking on top. Now the next thing that you want to do is oh, are they all going to have marks on the inside? No. There may be a reciprocal error in it, so take a marked one and an unmarked one. A marked one should be unmarked, marked. One of the things that Malcolm Tibbetts does is uses rubber bands on it. Just to see what we have. Those joints look pretty good. Now the next thing what we're going to do is I'll sand the edges of each one just very lightly, just to knock off any fuzz on it. And the reason we say to do an even number, we're going to pull these things apart like this before, as we glue them. That way we can go back in. If we don't have, we should be able to get a real good tight fit here, and then we can sand the individual halves and bring them back in here together. I'll show you that in a minute. That doesn't look too bad right now just to get started. So let's go ahead and sand the edges. And it's pretty close. One of the problems with doing rubber bands, you get more than 12 pieces, and it's almost impossible to keep them from flying over all over the place. And particularly if you get, this is 3/4 of an inch thick, and if it was thinner, it would be even more of a problem. You want to be careful that you don't mess up the edges. So. Walnut is particularly easy. When you get into maple, that'll get a little bit more fuzzy. What I've done here is I've got a piece of MDF and I just glued some sandpaper on it. Made a little sanding table out of it. Plain what a fuzzy edge. See those pieces of maple, see these little places right here. Right along there. You can see it a little fuzzy right there on it. This is what we've got to eliminate. Next thing we do, we can start gluing this ring up. And I cannot glue without having wax paper. I flunked glue up in kindergarten and never got over it. What I'm going to be doing is using Tight Bond Clear, translucent glue on this. This has got a fast setup time. This is what's called a rub joint. Glues. Glue both sides here. And then just rub them together like that. And hold them for a couple of seconds. You can set that pair aside. you want a nice, even, tight joint. Sugar. Oh well. Now, see, these have got quite a bit of strength already. They just set up. This is actual time really right now too. Okay, that's half of them glued up. You don't have to hold these very long because they do bond up here quite a bit very quickly. Okay. By doing this rub joint, what I'm doing is actually creating a vacuum and between the glue and the two pieces. That's why they're so strong so quickly. And this glue does penetrate the cells in the wood. Which further makes them stronger there like that. that joint. There we go. Now we'll let that set for just a little bit. At this point, I would go in and cut my next ring and get it ready to glue. These pieces are thick enough and the segmented length is long enough that they're not going to be flying around. But when you get to some small pieces, if you ever do, that's when you have to really be careful. I didn't get all that knot cut out. I want to cut that knot out so that it doesn't influence the work. I'm short one. I need to cut one more. Now then, we're going to proceed again just the way we did before. Let me just line these up. Okay, now, if they don't fit before you glue them up, they're not going to fit after you glue them up. So they've got to be fit. And if you put glue on these and then try to put the rubber bands on, it's going to be even worse trying to get them in there. Okay, we waited overnight for the glue to dry, and we're starting to clean up our half sections. And marked here, this is ring 4, so I marked 4 on each half. Got a problem though. I screwed up. And there's too many rings that don't look good here. And so I traced it over to these gaps are not acceptable. This one, like this. What I'm going to do now is go over, I've got a disc sander. I'm going to use a disc sander to smooth them somewhat. But when I was doing that, I noticed these gaps. The reason for these gaps is I failed to line up my saw blade.
Yep.
What we're going to do now is go over to the disc sander. If you don't have a disc sander, you're going to have to spend some time sanding on a sheet like this. Okay, now what we're going to do is sand this way, and then come in here like this, and we'll sand it this way. And I urge you to be very cautious with a disc sander. If you see my knuckles here, I had a ring explode on me, and I pushed my knuckles into the sander. So be very careful here. This is just to take the fuzz off again. See how nice this joint fits now? What we need to do is take some denatured alcohol and just rub, clean up these edges here a little bit so that we can see. This side looks, notice that these joints look real nice here on this side. We'll flip it over. That joint is going to be okay. That's just a little high spot there. But here is what we're going to see. This joint is not acceptable. See how the crack is here like that? And that's because of the angle. This side looks okay on this side. It's just this one right here. So what we're going to have to do is fix this. What we're going to do is just come in here on the bandsaw and very carefully cut along this edge. And as long as we keep it straight, then we can go over to the sander and smooth it up and glue it back together and it'll be all right. Now when you do this, you want to be sure that you don't change the angle. And you just press it in like that, okay? Okay, I'm just going to glue this one section up and let it dry before we do anything more with this. going to use that friction row. You probably can't see what I'm doing here, but I'm just rubbing this here a little bit like this and trying to even up the joint here. There we go. I'm going to hold this for a few seconds. That's all it takes really to hold that. Now, I have to do that with each one, and then I'll come back here, and then I'm going to sand and get these joints to fit perfectly. Since I cut this one, I'm off. I want to show you the way I like to do this now in making the correction. After I cut it on the bandsaw and glued the two pieces together, these aren't quite lined up, so I have to go over to the bandsaw or over to the disc sander now and correct that. That one needs a little work on it. That one looks pretty good. So. Okay, that joint looks good. Okay, now there are a number of ways of doing this. If you put a clamp from here to here, you can jeopardize these rings, and you can pull them or put too much pressure on it, and they'll come apart. You can use a hose clamp. I used to use hose clamps, but found them to be very inefficient. They're hard to work with. So what I like to do now, I've got some cord like this, and you can reuse this cord. It's a lot easier. Before you glue up anything, test and make sure that the cord is going to go around there a couple of times. And I'm using the Tight Bond translucent wood glue, and it's got a very short setup time. Okay. Now we'll do our rub joint. That surface is not level. Okay, then I take a pencil, and I like to come someplace away from the joint that I'm doing, and then you just twist this. Make sure it's up about the middle. And that's all the pressure you need to do that. Now, it's nice to put this under weight to keep it from bending there like that. Get some scrap like that. And that should be enough to keep it level. Okay. Here we see there's quite a bit of gap there that I've got to go do, and I'll do that's the same way with this. So I've got 3 more to do. And then what I'll do is I'll stack my rings to make sure I get a nice shape. I've gone ahead and glued up the sacrificial faceplate here. This is the first ring. One of the things I'm going to do now is probably go over to the disc sander and cut this little burr off here and this one like here. It'd be easier if I do it that way than if we do it on the lathe.